Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I must say it's disappointing that as I stand up to speak on behalf of the Scottish National Party and the Scottish Government that the Prime Minister has walked out the chamber. I regret that that is the response that we get from the Prime Minister, all too common, I must say. And this is on the day that the Prime Minister told us that the UK would leave the European Union with a deal. She's come to Parliament defeated and desperate. This is a Prime Minister who is willing to break every promise she has made to this House and to the people of the United Kingdom. This is a Prime Minister who has had to offer her own resignation to get her own party to support her bad Brexit deal. This is a Prime Minister obsessed with power but powerless. Mr. Speaker, instead of serving the interests of all these islands, this Tory government is seeking to serve the interests of no one but the Tory party, and even that has not worked. The Prime Minister cannot pull her fractured party together, and we in this House and the rest of the UK will pay a price for that failure to seek a broader consensus. Mr. Speaker, it is time they were stopped. I take no credit from pointing out to the Prime Minister that at no time has she sought to reconcile the 52% who voted to leave and the 48% who voted to remain. All we seemed to get was the constant refrain that Brexit means Brexit and we were leaving on the 29th of March. There was no attempt to go beyond the soundbite and engage. No attempt to engage across this House. No attempt to engage with the devolved administrations. It has always been her way or the highway. And of course, all she's done is sought to meet the demands of the ERG.
I thank my right honourable friend for giving way, and he sets out well the game playing that has gone on up until today. And there's no doubt that there's game playing going on with the motion today, but it appears that some Labour MPs may be getting bought by that game playing, in spite of the damage that it's going to cause to our constituents, our poorest constituents, in spite of the cost that it is going to have in terms of this terrible Brexit, but also that it's going to usher in a right-wing Tory Prime Minister, even worse than the disaster we have right now. Can my right honourable friend reflect on the damage to Labour that that vote, passing by this House, by Labour votes, would have on the Labour Party in Scotland?
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend. We are at a very dangerous juncture. And I appeal to members on the Labour benches to think very, very carefully as to where we are today. Because if the government, somehow or other, manages to get this through on the back of Labour MPs voting for this government, we know that the Prime Minister is going to depart. I will in a second. We know that the Prime Minister is going to depart. And we're all going to be left in the hands of the Tory MPs that are going to appoint a new Prime Minister. A Prime Minister who is in all event likely to be a Brexiteer. And I appeal to Labour members. Don't give that authority to the Conservative Party. Don't be the midwives of Brexit. Don't allow this Tory government, on the backs of a few Labour MPs, to deliver a hard Brexit that is going to imperil all our constituents. And I give way.
Thank him for giving way. Can we have a bit less of the holier-than-thou grandstanding from the SNP on this issue? Let's be honest, they would be completely happy for the current deal, with all its faults and the danger to Northern Ireland, to go on a ballot paper on a people's vote, with the possibility that that could be the deal that people vote for. Where's the integrity in that?
My goodness, Mr. Speaker, you know, this is a very serious moment for all of us. And I applaud the million-odd people that marched in London last weekend, the 6 million people that have want to see revoke on the ballot paper, and I will in a second. But I do appeal to Labour members, because if you go through the lobbies tonight with the Conservatives, then you're delivering a hard Tory Brexit, and you will pay a price economically for that. And thank goodness in Scotland Thank goodness in Scotland, Mr. Speaker, we have the opportunity to defend ourselves, because we will not allow ourselves to be dragged out of the European Union. And it will usher in the day that the thing that so many members of this House tell us that they want to preserve, the Union of the United Kingdom, that will be over. Because Scotland will and Scotland must become an independent member of the European Union.
Speak for Scotland. I'm very grateful to the right honourable gentleman for giving way. The first thing I would say is the SNP does not speak for Scotland. The second thing is, and I think the honourable gentleman needs to reflect on this, everyone on this side of the House, with the exception of a few people who are standing up for their constituents, are on the same side, and he should remember that. His entire speech so far has attacked the Labour Party, but tells you all you need to know about the Nationalists. So I would say to the right honourable gentleman, rather than using his speech to attack the Labour Party when we'll all be in the same lobby tonight, why was he not in the lobby with us with the Customs Union on Wednesday night, and they could have prevented this mess?
You know, I say to my honourable friend, and he knows I have respect for him, that I want us to unite together. I'm not attacking the Labour Party. You know, you can laugh, but what I'm saying to Labour members is don't be duped by voting for the Conservatives today. Have some backbone, and let's make sure that all of us are united. That's what I'm appealing for you to do. But the Labour Party have to reflect on the fact that in 2014 in Scotland, that's exactly what you did. You joined with the Conservatives in better together. And you would have thought by now that you would have learned the lesson. That the reason that you become also-rans in Scottish politics is because time after time you side with the Tories. One of these days, the Labour Party have to understand that they should be standing up with the people of Scotland. And let me say to the honourable member, I can see him gesticulating wildly, that day of the referendum...
Order! Order, I'm sorry. There is a very disorderly atmosphere in the House. Sustained barracking and finger-pointing of a most unseemly kind. Please, let's try to lower the decibel level and treat each other with respect. Mr. Ian Blackford.
You are, of course, quite right, Mr. Speaker. But I say to the Labour Party that the day will come where there will be a referendum on Scottish independence. And I hope next time that they decide to stand with the people of Scotland and we can get that safe passage towards independence in Europe. I am going to make some progress. Mr. Speaker, there has been no attempt to engage across this House, no attempt to engage with the devolved institutions. It has always been the Prime Minister's way or the highway. There has been no appreciation that rather than being sucked in to reconcile herself with the ERG, the Prime Minister should have sought to work across party. Mr. Speaker, last Wednesday the Prime Minister met opposition party leaders. Many of us set out our positions, but crucially, Mr. Speaker, when we extended an olive branch and sought to work with the Prime Minister, it was rejected. It was the Prime Minister who would not budge, transfixed, repeating the same old mantra, caught in a trap of her own making. Leadership brings responsibility. It has been sadly lacking in this case. It is little wonder that we are left in this situation, that the Prime Minister is isolated from the other parties in this House and leaving the UK in a position of division. I will give you
the right honourable gentleman giving way, and I'm really delighted that he's now looking at the substance of the government's motion, because I think it's really important that all of us who see this motion for what it is and are going to vote against it stick together, don't turn against each other. But can he help us with this? Has he had the opportunity, and would he welcome the opportunity, to speak to the Attorney-General about, and I'm sure he's going to come off his phone in a minute, if somebody could give him a prod. Prod. Thank you. Prod. Hello. Has he had the opportunity to speak to the Attorney-General, and would he take that opportunity to speak to the Attorney-General to discover the intention of the government in relation to the withdrawal bill, and whether it's their intention to revoke Section 13 of the Withdrawal Act we passed last year?
Hear, hear.
My right honourable friend is absolutely correct, and we've had no clarity from the Attorney General on that issue. And let me applaud the right honourable lady and members of the Liberal Democrats and of Plaid Cymru and of the Green Member of Parliament, because, Mr Speaker, we have all sought to work together. We have all sought to, and those on the Labour side as well, we have all sought to work together to bring unity to the opposition, to present a credible alternative. And on Monday, I hope that we do that we can coalesce around a motion that we can support, that sends a very clear message to the European Council ahead of its meeting on the 10th of April. And we say to the European Union, on the basis of the government being able to achieve a consensus, trust the House of Parliament, trust the members. But it is in that spirit that I say to all colleagues in this House, and I plead with you, under no circumstances, vote with the government today. Don't make it easy for this government to deliver us into a blind Brexit. I'm going to make some progress. Mr Speaker, I don't think I will forget the Prime Minister failing to take responsibility for her own failings and blaming Parliament for the impasse. In so doing, seeking to put Parliament against the people in a way that was quite shameless. Having made a catastrophic error of judgment, we are still waiting for an apology. Where is that apology, Prime Minister? Today, Mr Speaker, we must close the door on the Prime Minister's proposal. Close the door and move on. Parliament today must reject this shambolic proposal before us. I will give way.
Thank you very much. It's very kind of the Right Honourable Member for giving way. But would you agree with the Scottish Fishermen's Federation, the Scottish NFU, the Scottish CBI and the Federation of Small Business that what is important today that Scottish MPs, that all the MPs in the United Kingdom vote for jobs and businesses in their constituencies? And voting against the motion makes no deal more likely. And Scotland is watching the SNP.
Well, I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman for his intervention, and I would ask him to reflect on the situation that every local authority area in Scotland voted to remain. And the people of Scotland can reflect on the fact that the 13 Conservative MPs have failed time and time again, Mr Speaker, to stand up for the people of Scotland. And when I hear the honourable gentleman praising the unicorn of no deal, it is very simple, because what he must do, along with his colleagues, the so-called Scottish Conservatives, is to vote with us on Monday to support the motion on revocation and stop this Conservative government driving Scotland out of the European Union, because, Mr Speaker, that is the way to protect jobs in Scotland.
I'm very grateful to my right honourable friend for giving way, and I'm sure Scotland, unlike the Prime Minister, is watching and listening to him. Is he aware, like me, from talking to his businesses in his constituency and businesses across Scotland, that their foremost consideration is that freedom of movement should be preserved for the benefit of the Scottish economy and because of Scotland's demographics? And is that one of the main reasons that SNP MPs cannot vote for this withdrawal agreement, because it ushers in the end of freedom of movement?
My learned and honourable friend is absolutely correct. We've been enriched by freedom of movement. We've been enriched by those that have come to live and work and contribute to life in Scotland. And it's perhaps the most shameful aspect of this whole consideration, that we're turning back, that we're turning inwards, and we're closing the door on those that would come to Scotland and help us grow our economy. You know, Mr Speaker, our population has barely grown over the course of the last 100 years. It started to increase over the course of the last decade. And the Conservatives opposite want to put that handbrake and to stop those that want to come and live and work in our beautiful country. We want them to come in, and that is why, Mr Speaker, that not only must we reject this motion today, but yes, we must stop Brexit in all our interests. Mr Speaker, I'm going to make some progress because I'm aware that other people wish to speak. We were promised another vote on the Prime Minister's deal. But because the Prime Minister knows she has no support for her deal, she comes here to play games, to trick MPs that backing her disastrous deal, yet it's still the same deal the House voted against not once but twice. Mr. Speaker, this deal should be dead. Before us are the terms in which the Prime Minister wants us to agree to withdraw from the European Union without any clarity about our future. Mr. Speaker, this is a blindfold Brexit. I'll give way one more time.
I'm very grateful to the right honourable gentleman, but can I just beg him, because I'm standing in front of a plaque that says more in common than divides us, and he knows in this House on many issues we put aside the party issues and we have very subtly, sometimes worked together on certain issues. And I beg him today to just, as he ends his speech, to come a little bit back on calling all of us who believe that this isn't an honest debate today. This is a confidence trick to trick us into misleading our constituents. We are nearly there. We can defeat this. Let's stay together.
Well, I have to say, I applaud the honourable gentleman for that intervention, because I agree with him, and that's precisely what we're seeking to do. And I hope all his colleagues, every single one of his colleagues, stay with us today, and we can defeat this government. I'm conscious, Mr. Speaker, of time, and I've been generous with interventions. I do now want to make some progress. How can any MP agree to sleepwalk in behind a deal that they have no idea what it means for the future of our countries, our constituents and our communities? It is incomprehensible that anyone could even consider simply taking the Prime Minister's word for it, especially a Prime Minister who can't even be truthful about living up to her word. Like her predecessor, the Prime Minister is going to ride off into the sunset after delivering crisis, chaos and further uncertainty for the UK. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has committed the ultimate betrayal. She is abdicating all responsibility. How humiliating, how reckless. History will remember her premiership as one defined by cowardice, falsights and negligence. Mr. Speaker, I cannot believe that any leader could take us to this place. It is a disgrace. The constant promises to find consensus, to find a way forward, yet the Prime Minister has done as expected. She has run down the clock, only to ignore the wishes of Parliament, the wishes of the people, and engage in a game of blackmail and trickery to win support. It is an absolute outrage that those who go through the lobbies in support of the Prime Minister and the Government will be responsible for aiding and abetting the greatest act of self-harm in the United Kingdom. Mr. Speaker, the arguments against the Prime Minister's plan do not need to be rehearsed. They are well known in this House. They are well known to every household in the country. But let me say this. It is not only the substance of the plans the Prime Minister has put together, but it is the disgusting treatment that the Prime Minister and the Tory government have displayed towards the people of Scotland that need to be known in every household in Scotland. One more time.
Some time ago, the right honourable gentleman talked about the enrichment of free movement. Isn't it the fact that the greatest enrichment of free movement enjoyed by Scotland has been the free movement between the nations of the United Kingdom? And isn't it ironic that he talks about the Prime Minister not paying attention to the 48%? He absolutely fails to pay attention to the 55% who voted to stay within the United Kingdom. And when is he going to acknowledge that he is a member of the Parliament of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland and not just a Scottish member?
My goodness, I was almost expecting the honourable gentleman to burst into a chorus of Land and Hope of Glory. Is he really suggesting, friends, that people from Scotland won't have the right to come and live and work in the rest of the United Kingdom? Is that what he's suggesting? Because, quite frankly, if he should apologise, because that's a disgrace. And it's just what we see from so many Tory members seeking to threaten the people of Scotland with sanctions. I have to say to him, it really lacks any degree of dignity. You know, it really is the case that the Tories think they can do whatever they want to Scotland and get away with it. So much, Mr Speaker, for the partnership of equals. We've been ignored, silenced and sidelined. The futures of citizens across Scotland and the rest of the UK held to ransom by right-wing Brexiteers and the DUP. Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister has no mandate from Scotland and has no right to assert that her version of Brexit is the only version of Brexit. Lies brought the country to vote for Brexit in the first place, and they certainly didn't vote to become poorer and to be faced with the prospect of troops being mobilised to manage basic services. How extraordinary that a Prime Minister in the United Kingdom is threatening us with troops on the streets, because, Mr Speaker, that is the reality. Mr Speaker, with one internal confidence vote, one parliamentary confidence vote, with the government being held in contempt of Parliament for the first time in history, with scores of her ministers resigning, and with her flagship policy in ruins, the Prime Minister has no legitimacy or authority left to carry forward her policy or speak for the country. And, Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister certainly does not have any authority, nor will she ever have authority for Westminster to tell the people of Scotland what to do. The people of Scotland will decide what's best for the people of Scotland. Now, more than ever, that reality has been needed to sink into the minds of politicians across this chamber, and on that point, I'll give way to one of the Scottish colleagues.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Does he have a kindly word for the businesses in Scotland? And does he have a kindly word for the over 1 million people who voted to leave the EU? The 1 million people are from Scotland.
Yes, of course I do, Mr Speaker, because businesses in Scotland know that the best way to protect their interest is to stay in the European Union. Every economic analysis of any substance that's been published has shown us that we're going to be poorer. And I say to those that voted for Brexit in Scotland, of course we understand why you voted the way that you do, and we of course will listen to your concerns. But our obligation is to speak with everyone and to have that open conversation and dialogue as to what's in the best interest of the people of Scotland. How do we grow prosperity in Scotland? How do we deliver a fairer Scotland? And that is why independence offers the best option for all of us. Mr Speaker, Westminster clearly has no interest in doing what is right for Scotland if it votes for this motion this afternoon. Westminster has no authority over the rights and the freedoms of the people of Scotland. And Westminster will never, not ever, be an authority of the sovereign right of the Scottish people to determine our futures and to choose to be a European nation.
Thank my right honourable friend for giving way. Isn't it interesting that whilst he's talking about Westminster not being interested in the people of Scotland, there are members on the benches opposite gesturing for him to sit down and be quiet? Other people have spoken. The front bench leader of the SNP has a right to speak in this chamber, same as every other member.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend that it's absolutely right that we are sent here 35 SNP MPs to stand up for our constituents, the majority in Scotland. And at a time that this House is threatening to take us out of the European Union against our will, I can absolutely guarantee that the voice of Scotland and the voice of Remain will be heard in this chamber, and no Conservative MP is going to shut Scotland down. Mr Speaker, this Tory government has wasted £4 billion on investing in no-deal preparations. This money should never have been spent, and we should have ruled out no deal as a possibility long ago. Why did the Prime Minister not do that? The PM regularly says that all MPs have a duty to deliver Brexit. Above all duties mandated to the SNP, we are elected to stand up for Scotland's interest and Scotland's voice. It is clear that no one else will, and we are making it absolutely crystal clear. We will never accept Brexit on behalf of the people of Scotland. The Prime Minister has prescribed her Brexit deal to Scotland despite decisive and unanimous analysis that this will be bad for our country and do irreparable damage to our key relationships. Even some of our cabinet seem to agree. 100,000 jobs, Mr Speaker, could be lost from Scotland if Westminster backs the Prime Minister. EU workers needed to grow our economy, denied to Scotland if the Tories get their way. Our economy smaller, our people poorer, and our country isolated. Mr Speaker, the SNP will not ever do that to Scotland. We will not back the Prime Minister. We will always stand up and put Scotland's interests first. Mr Speaker, in conclusion, I want to say that I am angry. I am frustrated, but I am too deeply saddened that we have reached this point. Imagine how people think up and down the United Kingdom. They are ashamed of this Parliament, ashamed and embarrassed of British politics and the laughingstock that we have become in the world. But I want to say to people watching at home, we in the SNP are embarrassed too. We are appalled at the behaviour of those on the government benches and many of those on the official opposition benches as well. They have let you down. They have broken Britain and now they have no idea how to fix it. While the Tory and the Labour parties scramble on a race to the bottom, I say to them, listen up. The people are watching. 1 million people marched to demand a second EU referendum. 6 million people signed a petition to revoke Article 50. Are we listening to their voices? And the answer has to be no. Yes, the SNP is here to stand up for Scotland. We are proud to represent the voices of Scotland and to stand up for the democratically expressed will of our people and our Parliament. But, Mr Speaker, we also care about the rest of the United Kingdom, about our friends and our neighbours. But I deeply question, Mr Speaker, the motives of the Tory and the Labour leadership. The power is in all of our hands. Let us use it. I plead to members, vote down the government's proposition this afternoon. Let us put the question back to the people. The Prime Minister has lost control. The government is out of control. The Leader of the Opposition is unwilling to exert control over all of his party. So let us give power back to the people, end this stalemate and give certainty back to businesses, assurances to EU workers, and let us salvage our bond with our European neighbours. It is not too late. We cannot give up. Take back control and give power back to the people.
Order. An 8-minute limit on backbench speeches applies with immediate effect. Mr Ian Duncan Smith.